Okay, everybody. I know I know we're recovering from one of the worst post games I think we've seen in a while. But let's talk about Ni no Kuni 1. Thoughts and feelings, what I recommend. I think this game is very complicated to give a rating. There's a lot to like about the game. It has fantastic art design direction. You can very much tell, even without having looked up anything, it's very much inspired by Studio Ghibli. Character designs are mostly good. Locations, fantastic. Really great use of lighting in most of the dungeons. Monster design, very quirky. It kind of has the same, I would say, childhood / young boy appeal in terms of, like, from the standpoint of it is the story of a child's journey, and it is more meant to appeal to a younger audience, is more how I meant to phrase. And from that standpoint, it kind of hits those points with the plot. And I can see a lot of reasons why people would like this game. There's a lot of reasons, and it could be small ones, it could be big ones. We're listening to one of the better aspects of the game right now, the soundtrack. Soundtrack, fantastic. 10 out of 10 in terms of, like, game design, sound effects and stuff like that. Super good. The problem with the game is that while it has all these inspirations, while it has really cool elements in the game itself, in particular the Wizard's Companion, which we'll talk about in more detail in a little bit, it is really, really lacking when it comes to RPGs. I think this is the first one that I played where, even though it was intended for a younger audience and the story was meant to appeal to potentially that same demographic, it really, really struggled to get the gameplay right. It is, to say it is flawed is an understatement. It is very rough. It is both supposed to be beginner friendly, yet also incredibly unforgiving. It's in this weird valley of constant difficulty spikes, and yet also easy gameplay. It's such a weird combination that had you not played the game, it's really hard to describe in proper detail. Like, even having just been playing it for, 50 plus hours in the post game, it's still difficult to wrap my head around it. So one big issue that you see pretty much immediately, without even going into spoilers, tutorials. Tutorials are everywhere. They permeate every boss fight. They permeate even basic things like, this is how you open the menu. They are really, really overkill in the game, and it could get really annoying when combined with characters that are supposed to be there, I think, for comedic relief, where you have a little companion with a lantern for their nose, basically sassing you the whole game and calling you dumb. That's kind of a turnoff for me, for sure. I did not like Drippy at all in terms of what he did for the plot or his personality. And unfortunately, he probably has the most lines in the game, even more than the protagonist. It covers actually surprisingly dark topics for something that's more oriented for children. Things like death of a family, overcoming loss, dealing with the brokenheartedness. And, well, to some extent, it does have more, good versus evil, like very obvious forces of good versus very obvious forces of evil. I will say, without going into plot detail, it does add a little more nuance to it as it goes in, so it's not quite as black and white with things as you get towards the end of the game, which is definitely a welcome touch for the more mature audience. But wow, I don't know what to say. I mean, like, again, if you had just picked up this game for the first 10 hours, I don't even know if you had been talking to every NPC and not skipping any cutscene, I don't even know if you would get to the core mechanic of the game. Like, it's almost a spoiler to talk about it. Like, it's such a weird thing that it's like the whole game is revolving around you becoming basically a person on their way to becoming a great sage, or the equivalency of a wizard, and you go through your equivalency of a hero's journey in another world where you're attempting to avert the death of a family member through other means. So from that perspective, even though you fight like 4 or 5 bosses, it still doesn't like give you the ability to summon, or not summon. It doesn't give you the ability to collect additional familiars, which are kind of like this game's Pokemon, right? Like they all have like different types, like advantages against each other. There's like elemental weakness, so you know you got your physical, you got fire, you got wind, you got water, you have light, you have dark. So, like, you know, you can play around and see who you like from there. But when it comes to the RPG aspects of the game, it just really, really struggles. And it's such a shame because it has, like, as I said before, really interesting monster design and really great locations to explore. But man, are they just handled in some of the worst ways I've seen in quite a while. So it's kind of hard to give a very concrete would I recommend it or not. This might be one of those games where I would say if you're willing to put up with a lot of jank and a lot of unfair mechanics, I think it's worth playing. I would say overall, I did like elements of the game, but I'm going to put an asterisk on the recommendation that if you go to play the game, I beg of you to please find a creature with high defense and has the defend command. You will absolutely regret it. I've played through the game twice now, once off stream, one on stream. And let me tell you, the fact that monsters either have the ability to psych themselves up for more attacks, or defend to block spells versus evade to dodge, man oh man, if you do not have defend on your AI companions, you might as well as just say goodbye. You are not going to have a good time at all with this game. And we saw elements of that with our playthrough. I just slightly skipped the song, sadly. So I think from that perspective, it's definitely really frustrating to have just elements of like, you're not able to catch the equivalency of Pokemon or collect demons in like a Persona game for like the first 10 hours or so. Like, you have to wait until you get another companion to get it? Like, that's crazy. I don't know what they were thinking with that. That should have been something you should have had as soon as you get your first familiar. Big, big misstep on their part to do that. And as I said before, there's just a lot of elements that would make it go from like, oh, okay, that doesn't sound too bad, where they just have like what we'll call the annoying factor on a lot of those mechanics. Like, okay, you're like, you know, you played your Pokemon equivalency games. It can't be that hard to capture monsters in this game, right? Right? And then you play this game and you're like, oh no, it's total RNG whether you recruit something, and there's nothing that boosts it other than one passive ability, and it's not by a lot. Oh no. Like, because some of these recruitment rates are like modest, like 20%. We've seen them go as low as 4%. So having to grind an enemy that you want to fight over and over just to capture it, and you have to level it, and there's no equivalency of like share XP or like spreading the XP to people in your reserves, let alone people that are in your like PC bank equivalency. There's no like rare candies you could feed them to fix any kind of level gaps or to help push past some awkward levels. It's really weird. It's just a weird decision from them, and that honestly kind of warps the gameplay in a bad way for a majority of the game, to be honest with you. And it's just like one of those things where there's a lot of things that are outside of your control, where they're interesting in concept, but they're just like such a blunder mechanically, where it will end up impacting your gameplay, whether you realize it does or not, because again, a lot of it might not, despite the many tutorials, some of it is not obvious. So we talked a little bit about before that it was kind of like the element weakness system with monsters. There's also kind of a, we'll call it weapon triangle for lack of a better term, but basically a spirit triangle, right? So like everything gets associated with the moon, the star, or the sun, and then that is basically one is strong against one is weak against the other. Then you might have like the double sun or the double moon or whatever the heck equivalency there are, which are just basically like double versions of those. I think they give you small things like bonus XP on top of that, and some slight differences in stats. So there are differences between each of the types. But again, not being able to really control that when you capture it, and capturing is also random, You're not guaranteed to get the one of the right type, so even if you find one that's there, it kind of sucks. And you'll kind of notice it more in the early game than I would say the late game. But man, oh man, if they have a strength against you and you are not grinding in this game, man, oh man, are you just going to explode randomly in the early game. I'm not sure how much chat remembers, since it has been a while since we started the game. But just like normal monster fights, we could go from doing like 40 to 60 damage to like an enemy to just doing like 20, because we just don't have the right type. And because you don't really have the luxury of choosing their alignment, whether, you know, they're the sun, moon, whatever, on top of it being hard to level monsters in general without like massive grinding or knowing like where the rare enemies are, it feels just kind of bad. Like, I would have thought that this kind of game would have been very forgiving with the level up system, and it kind of is, but it also isn't. It's very strange to me. It's one of those things where I wish that they had a bit more of a catch-up system. Like, they kind of do, but they don't. Like, monsters seem to have different XP growth rates, and when you evolve them, unlike a game like Pokemon or things like Persona, when they go to the next form, they don't keep their level. They get reset to level 1, so they'll have slightly better stats from before. Honestly, it could be really rough, because if you evolve the character to get more trick slots, since you have a limited number of actions a character can learn, and then on top of that, there's only so many that you can have in combat, so you can only know, I think, like 8 or so. I never counted, but it's an okay number. But generally, you only end up with like 5 or 6 different commands you can teach them at that point. So you have like a couple things you can rotate out, and then you have like your other menu, and it'll increase as you level and evolve. That set number will increase. But it's just one of those things where without a lot of knowledge, it can feel kind of bad, because you'll end up having a character you like, and they will just have the worst stats. And then if you hadn't looked them up, you wouldn't know how terrible they were until you're past the point where you're like, oh, this character is actually just unusable once we're in the mid-game. Like, actually unusable. And it's like, man, now I have to potentially go grind something for hours just to have another monster that could kind of do well, but it hasn't been getting boss XP, so it's always going to be like 15 plus levels below your party, unless you, again, find like really specific enemies. Yeah, it's like, oh, you got punished for choosing something that you liked. And I don't mean like they're just like slightly worse. Like, some of them are like really, really atrocious. And let me tell you, if you're playing characters that don't have high defense and also don't have high attack, you are going to watch your AI explode. The AI are arguably, I think, the worst element of the game. You take monsters that have kind of unknown stats to you as the player, unless you were literally playing with the guide, and you're just hoping that the alignment system doesn't just destroy you in the early game, because you're like, I only have like one really good attacker, and I didn't find any good attackers in like the first 3 areas. And it's like, okay, I have this one character, but you know, the one of the familiars I started with is already kind of useless, so what do I do? And it just kind of forces you to make those awkward guesses and potentially waste a lot of time, rather than giving you what should be really fun choices between monsters. And I think it's definitely a shame that some of them are just so unviable without like super, super insane levels of grinding. And I think that's just a big unfortunate misstep from them. Like, it's to the point where we can find some random monster on like the cliffs in the sand area, for example, and that thing will be so strong that it literally invalidates the entire purpose of the rest of your party. Like, you find that kind of monster and you know where that is, it's like, it's a completely different difficulty of the game. I'm gonna read what Chris says before I continue here. Digimon Cyber Sleuth does a similar thing with Monster Evolution, reset to level 1, but explains your evolutions better. Could you evolve them immediately and raise them towards a different evolution instead? Yeah, that's the other brutal thing. So, you don't just level at a set level. You could choose to metamorphose once you hit a certain level, but you could continue leveling to try to give yourself more bonus stats in the next form. But honestly, it's just one of those things where, from experience, I enjoyed a lot more rushing the first form, going straight to the second form, just because the stat gap is ludicrous, I would say, between like the second form and the third form, let alone getting stuck in the first form. Welcome, Prismatic Blaze. But again, like, there's a lot of things that you have to kind of be conscious of, and one of them is the AI controlling these monsters. So you have monsters with like really ridiculously wide-ranging stats. Some of them are like ultra glass cannons, so if you're not like actively dodging or like tagging out when an enemy goes to hit you in order to dodge attacks, which, by the way, I think is actually a pretty cool feature. That's like one of the only positive things I will say about the combat. I do like that a lot. So if you're not feeling very confident with interrupting attacks with counters, which is cool, or timing your defense or evades, it's just better to play with tankier characters. But your AI companions, oh my gosh, they definitely hamper this game, and they made the game, I'm just gonna be honest with you, brutally unfun for like the first 20 hours or so when I had them. And that is a really tall order to ask people to do. If you're somebody that likes to grind, I think it's less of an issue. If you're willing to capture every monster in an area before moving on, I don't think what I'm saying is applicable to you. But if you just like a handful of monsters and you find them early, and they don't happen to match the meta of what is needed to survive boss encounters later on in the game, you are just hosed. Like, it is just actually ridiculous. See? Look at the cheap viewers, chat. It's ridiculous. Even the cheap viewers don't believe it. But I think from that standpoint, it's one of those things where you will find a big frustration factor whenever you go to play with monsters that potentially have lower end defense, and I mean real low end defense kind of stuff, and there's not really a way to fix it. Right? It's not like Pokemon where you can have your party of 6, you pick out which one you think is your favorite or is in a favored matchup in a particular set encounter, and that's kind of what you do. Or you have one that's like for the wild encounter, and that's like, oh, you know, that's your main. It's just gonna beat everything because it's over leveled. It's gonna beat everything. You don't have to worry about it. This one, it's like, oh, this thing is physical resist and you only have physical damage. Oh, you're done. GG, it's over. like, oh no, like you've made a terrible mistake. I hope you bought certain items, because otherwise you are not doing anything with the rest of the game. Like, actually, it's just over. So you'll find yourself kind of struggling with what I would say was another big misstep in the game is the equipment system. So I like the idea that you can essentially equip up to 3 different item types on a monster in order to buff them. The problem is that a lot of the item types are just not supported at all. I mean, I think the ongoing joke with chat was we were wondering if a creature needed helmet or not, because we found 2 the entire game, by the way. And meanwhile, we're like, gee, I wonder what items it thinks we're using. And we get like 30 million lances and like 30 million swords. And it's like, wow, that sure sucks if I was, you know, playing any of the other monsters that can't use these. That's real cool of you to balance out the item drops for us in the party. But I think they come into a really big issue, as I said before, because of the fact that the items are random. You're not guaranteed to have a good defensive item. And ironically, one of the better defensive items is Badge. If you don't have that thing that protects you from insta-kill, like if you get reduced to less than 0, you're put to 1 kind of deals, there are just certain encounters that you'll just die instantly. Welcome, Blaze. We're just going through a wrap-up. And I think from that perspective, it's just very poorly balanced. So you'll just have some creatures that you won't know what they can equip until you have them. Like, sometimes you can kind of tell, but a lot of times you can't. Like, you don't know if they have a badge or scale or helmet or hat or something weird. Like, sometimes it's based off of how they look, but other times you're like, oh, I wish this character had badge, and they apparently don't have badge. Or you're like, wow, I have shield on this character, but he's a magic user, and there's barely any magic swords in the game. Gee, that sure would have been great to know before we started committing into these things. So it's just kind of a weird array of items, mixed with the abilities, I would say from the standpoint where I will give this. You can rotate out monster abilities to some extent. You can only learn a certain number total. It increases as you go along in the game how many you can have active in battle. So it's not just like, 3 moves and attack. You will get more than that. But I think the problem is that sometimes you just don't know what you're going to learn, and it's kind of crucial to be able to distinguish when you're looking at these abilities the concept of a fast attack versus a cinematic attack. And this is where the game balance becomes an absolute nightmare, especially with the AI. So until you get to the point where it unlocks the ability for you to block with the AI, yes, that is a thing. No, I don't understand why you don't start with it. No, I don't understand why they don't automatically block. No, I don't understand why they don't just evade attacks and you have to babysit them constantly. So on top of all those annoying things, you are potentially always going to be interrupted in the late game by cinematic attacks that will cancel your items or your spells. So I hope you have another quick spammable cinematic attack, and oops, does your monster not learn it? Yeah, you're done. Like, honestly, and you won't know if those are cinematic or not because they're not marked. You would have to just kind of play the game and just kind of test them and just hope it's a cinematic attack, and also hope it doesn't have a long cast time, because some of them are like nearly instant and are completely outrageous and broken, like Ear Splitter. And then others are just kind of terrible, low damage, cost a lot of MP. So it's just kind of like a wild west of abilities to choose from. Sometimes you get lucky. Very rarely you'll get the ability to feed your monsters items that are useful. Honestly, there is this whole mechanic of giving them additional stats. Frankly, rather irrelevant. I mean, I guess if you're min-maxing, maybe it matters to you. I would say at the very early point in the game, getting additional attack mattered, but none of the other stats really made a big difference. I mean, you're getting a total of like plus 40, plus 80, when you already have like 400 in a stat. And by the time you're at 400 in a stat, you're either unkillable or you one-shot everything. There's no in between. Like once you go above a certain number, adding more doesn't do anything. So it's like the difference between me being at 500 and 600 is largely irrelevant. Like I don't really care at that point. Like you've won the game is over kind of deals. So I think where a lot of the frustration with the game comes in is, as I said before, just a lot of really bad decisions mechanically. And you really have to stomach things like lack of fast travel for most of the game. Then there's times you have to use really awkward modes of transportation, like the ship, and it's really hard to go to and from the ship. And sometimes you won't realize you need the ship when you go to certain locations, and then you might realize there's certain areas when you get flight abilities that you can't go to and you need the ship instead, and you can't just immediately go to the ship. It's just... Not to mention all the backtracking. Tons of backtracking in the game. If you're doing anything, especially the post-game, boy oh boy, chat, what an absolute mess. We don't even have to talk about spoilers with the plot. I'm just telling you, like, they kind of based... I guess they wanted you to have, like, side quests that would keep you busy as you go to fix people's problems or literally mend broken hearts in the context of the plot. But from that scenario, a lot of it is just really annoying fetch quests. I mean, chat probably agrees with me almost point for point. A lot of them are just like, go raise this monster to X level, come back to me. Or they'll be like, go defeat this rare enemy in the overworld. Or go to this location, give them thing that you have from another person, then go back to them. And then sometimes it'll be like, oh, you're gonna have to keep coming back to this person like 6 to 7 times to complete a quest. And then you'll just get some like crappy amount of money for like 5 to 10 minutes of busy work. And it feels kind of like what I'll consider like early like MMORPG level quests. Like they're really not interesting. And it's such a shame because it's just a lot of busy work. They like just want you to get like X number of produce, or like you'll just go fight this, and it's just like there's like glimpses of recurrable characters, like the merchant characters that don't really do anything in the plot as you try to help them from town to town, for example. There's not really a payoff for them either. Just kind of unfortunate. Most of them really don't do anything at any point. They're just kind of there to be like, oh, if only someone could get X from Y. Like, they really are like that. It's kind of unfortunate. There's a few quests that do that differently. But they're very few and far between overall. Like, again, it should have been cool that there's like this concept of like rare hunts. But it's really bad that you have to go into a town in order to then get them. You can't just encounter them naturally in the wild. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we're gonna compare it to a game like Berseria, I don't have to be told that there's 5 enemies that are Code Red hunts, right? I will just see them in the overworld, and I'll go, oh, that's an optional fight. I could tell because of X or Y. And it's just like those little things of game design where it constantly makes you go back to a town to accept new quests. Or in the case of one of the quests, I think we went back to the character, what was it, 7 or 8 times? It's really unacceptable. In a world where it doesn't have really clean fast travel, or it requires you to go to like the opposite end of town and there's no fast way to do it. So you'll just have to walk for like 3 minutes because they just decided not to give you a warp to the location in the town, to the place that you need to go. And then they make you leave, and then you come back, and then you leave, and then you come back, and then you leave and you come back. I mean, especially as you come into like, I'm still not going to consider this spoilers yet because it's not really plot, but when it comes to like side quests in particular in the post game, it really likes you revisiting entire dungeons or going up to a certain point in a dungeon. I think we went to like some of the dungeons upwards of like 7 to 10 times. Like, I just want to be very clear. It's not like we just revisit once or revisit twice. Like, it is a completely absurd number of times you revisit every dungeon in the game, let alone if you're like hunting for monsters or doing anything else. And a lot of it is like also structured in a way that it isn't possible to do it all in one go, I mean, which does add a lot to the frustration of the game, where it feels like there's just a lot of padding, which is a shame because, again, like, it is such interesting visuals and the concept isn't bad, even if the plot is not quite my thing, or the humor is definitely not my thing. Where it has like all these interesting cinematics and it's like building up this, you know, big bad ominous enemy, and it is actually showing the enemies doing things, which I do appreciate from a plot perspective without going into plot details. I like seeing them respond and react to us. I don't like them just being like that far off concept, like, oh, we're gonna fight the element of chaos, whatever that means at the end of the game. That kind of deal. Like, I like that it shows you the villains progress over time. I like that kind of stuff in games. But the problem is, like, in between, when you're going from town to town, it's just a lot of padding. And it's such a shame because, like, if they had intended this to be for children, I don't know how this would appeal to them. It's just, like, it's very monotonous stuff and just retreading your place. And a lot of filler. Mixed with the inability to really gear up your stats on most monsters properly. I mean, you can have characters with no defensive items at all, like no armor, no shield in particular. So, like, if you get hit and you're only average level, you just die. I mean, Chad has seen, like, especially in the early game, like, oh boy, if I pick anybody that's quote-unquote average and I try to have a slugfest with enemies, in particular mini-bosses, you die, like, instantly. It is, like, extremely unforgiving. So you either offset it with like a bajillion amounts of grinding, or you just swap the monster. And 9 times out of 10, we just swap the monster and never use them again. Which I think is definitely a really unfortunate outcome of just do it how they set up the RPG elements. Like, if only they had just let you have a more like, I don't mind them having unique equipment, but they really needed to have at least one slot that was standard across all the characters. Like, all of them should have gotten shirts or robes or heavy armor, right? They should have just given you 3 tiers of armor and then still had rotating slots. Like, there would have been no issue with that. Honestly, like, they should have enforced it all the way through. So as I said before, it's a little disappointing. And mix that with AI that doesn't understand what weaknesses are or when to use attacks. Let me tell you, chat, we have seen more than once, and you can confirm or deny. It's up to you, people that have seen it before. But let me tell you, when you tell enemies or you tell your allies to do things like all-out attack, and then they summon the tank as the attacker, and they attack with one of the weakest spells they have, it is mind-boggling what goes through this AI's mind. Where my favorite is if you don't have a character with defend, they will attempt to block attacks with like the squishy mage character. Like, they could have like a 300 plus defense character, but if that character doesn't have defend and they just have like psych up or whatever, they're gonna face tank with the mage and die. They're like, Oh no, I have the equivalency of a water monster, and lightning/storm damage is coming my way. Better block with the penguin. If only I had a character that had 5 resists. Nope, I'm gonna choose to try to heal through this rather than block, because all-out defense means that I sometimes heal instead of evading or using defense, even though that's what you want me to do. Hence why you press the button. So it could definitely lead to a lot of frustration in the mid to late game of allies just dying left and right to just really stupid stuff, to the point where you really have to babysit monster abilities. I think chat saw me multiple times removing abilities. Like, I like the concept of having multiple options, but the AI just doesn't know how to use them. So I'm like, listen, he gonna be real dummy. He's getting 1 attack move, 1 heal move. That's it. He's not gonna use anything else properly. I'm just removing him. There's literally pointless. So it's kind of a shame to be in like the late game and I have like 2 skill slots assigned out of like 4 or 5. Just because I'm like, yeah, I really don't want the AI using this because they just have no concept of when to use this. They will be the character that tries to generally use things that are not effective on the enemy and stuff like that. And I think that's just such a shame. It just, you have to, you go from picking familiars you like to, I really hope they have high natural defense or their ability to wear heavy armor or use shield, because the AI is just not going to make it more than like 2 minutes otherwise. And granted, once you give them at least one of those characters, the play experience is very different. Like, I really like the ability to tag swap to dodge some manual moves. I like the ability to defend or react to big cinematic attacks. I didn't like telling our allies to do it because it was a coin flip whether they were smart enough to defend, evade, if they were going to cast heal rather than defend or evade, and it's just kind of chaos. And I just think there's just like little elements here and there for people that are more used to more complicated games, where like the ability to turn ally spells off individually would have solved like 60 to 65% of this game's issues, where you're like protagonist, I really don't want you to raise my defense in a fight where I kill enemies in 2 hits. I really don't want you to do this. I know you have an option to turn off all abilities, but I'm kind of hoping that I would be able to be in a point where I only want them to use a strong heal, or I only want them to do this, and I will manually command them to do other things if I want them to do it. They really needed to be to that point with it, and it just felt kind of undercooked there. So while we did work around it, and I did ultimately have fun in the later half of the game, it is a real tall order to say that you're going to get through the first, honestly, like 15 to 20 hours before the game really turns around. Like, granted, maybe you'll find the right enemy early. Like, maybe you'll have looked up which characters actually evolve into something useful. And I think your mileage will, vary with it, and you'll have more fun with it. If you happen to get certain monsters early, you'll be like, oh, wow, this actually ended up being kind of a good attacker. Versus later on in the game where you're like, oh, if only I had something that had strength against fire because it's one-shotting my entire party. Oh, all my favorite characters have weakness to fire and I can't seem to override this. And this kind of changes the matchup. That's kind of a problem. I now have to spend potentially an hour and a half to 2 hours just to fix this because it's not possible for me to progress. So it's kind of unfortunate they opened themselves up to it by just having, as I said before, very poor implementation of RPG. And while I understand why some people love it, I think there's a lot of aspects to it. It's hard to say that it's a hard recommend, but I am glad that we played it. So I'm not saying it's on Terranigma level of disappointment. In the end, I enjoyed parts of it, but I do think it really struggled to represent itself properly in RPG format, and it's such a shame. So I'm just trying to think if there's anything else before we go into spoilers. I have a lot to talk about in this game. Let me be very clear. We're talking about mechanics because I just want to be very clear. There are some very interesting things that happen in the game, but you have to kind of slog your way through really hard or annoying sections. Like, you'll go to fight a bounty hunt and like it'll be easy, next one will be easy, next one will be easy, then you instantly die, party wipe. Like, it's just wild. I mean, I think chat has seen there's just certain monster types where if they're a higher level than you, it's over. Like, it's absolutely over. Does chat remember me getting one shot for the first time? Which did happen multiple times in this game, despite having played before. Victory Music agrees. There, as I said before, I cannot understate how many one-shots have happened in this game due to the inability to balance your defense, mixed with you potentially having, I don't remember what they called it in-game. I'm going to say alignment, having alignment weakness to them, where it's like, oh, this mini-boss happens to be strong against my best attacker, meaning they basically do 1.5 times damage. Oh, I'm in trouble. Right, chat? Just like, oh, I'm really dead if they hit me. I'm really, really dead if they hit me. Like, they're already doing, like, half my health, but now it's 1.5. Yeah, it's over. GG. I guess one thing I didn't fully explain is, we'll back up. There's one thing I did forget before we go into the spoilers. When you get additional party members, everybody comes with a gimmick. And those additional abilities can be a big detriment because you can't turn them off. So, like, sometimes they'll heal with themselves rather than with the monster. And generally speaking, the human characters don't have any defense. Right, Chad? Like, they just have badges and stuff like that, which is really not going to cut it. So if they're stupid and they go to heal, or they go to steal, or whatever equivalence ability is, and they are doing that when you want to defend, they just kind of explode. I mean, I think chat can agree. We basically just had, like, absolute yo-yoing of certain party members because they were so untanky, and every time they made a poor decision with it, they just died on the spot. And again, that could feel really unfair when you tell them to do all-out defense. You give them a 1.5 seconds before the attack hits, so you did it real early. And then they still choose not to block. Is one of the most frustrating experiences with the game. And yeah, that is just really unfortunate. So I think that covers almost everything. So as I said before, hero's journey, kind of go through interesting elements, kind of plays like a Studio Ghibli film, both in terms of art and even to somewhat story direction, where it's kind of a youth adventure kind of thing. But I think that's it for non-spoiler. A revolving door of death, oh my gosh. So let's talk spoilers, chat. With gloves are off, we get to talk about the plot elements, we get to talk about the absolute nonsense that is in this game. Oh boy, chat. Oh boy, do I have a lot to say when it comes to this. I think it is a very bold choice in the early part of the game to have your character involved with the direct death of their mother. And then it builds up this whole concept of you have this best friend, Phil, who makes kind of bad decisions and or influences you to do bad things. And I love that for the rest of the game, you basically interact with him once and just never see him again. They build him up as like this really important figure, and like he kind of is from a plot perspective to get things started, and you just don't see him again. Just find that really funny, chat. And oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That post-game reward where you get the car back had so many tonal issues with me. I don't know what they were thinking. They're like, hey, remember when we crashed the car and your mother died because she went to save you in the river? Yeah, we're gonna give you the car. They're gonna give you the car in the post game. Like, we could probably save your mother, but now you're getting the car. Just like that was a choice. I still am not quite sure what they were thinking with that. I do like that. I guess one thing I didn't talk about in the non-spoiler section, but it's really hard to talk about in I guess in the non-spoiler section, but you do traverse between your home world, which takes place, I want to say, in the 40s. I forget the exact year, 30s or 40s. But from that perspective, when you go to Motorville and you go to this like wild fantasy world in between, I did like that the monsters, or at least some of the bosses that you encountered, had a corresponding quote-unquote soulmate in between worlds. I think that element was probably the strongest part of the game itself. In terms of like theming together like the more grounded world with the fantasy, I did like that they impact each other I thought that was actually a really good element of the game and one of the stronger points of the plot. Even if they didn't do the best things with it, I think it was one of the more interesting things that they played with. In particular with the reveal and who the big bad is, and the connection to Oliver and Oliver's mother. I thought that was actually decent. But I think where I struggle a bit more with that kind of stuff is, oh boy. How do we even ease into the conversation that we're about to go into? I think where they had a lot of problems with it was the Wizard's Companion. I think it's one of the most interesting elements of the game and probably the most divisive. I really liked the little stories and things that sometimes related to the plot that you're doing. Like some of them involved characters that you've talked to, like we call them the Deku tree, who you could go back to for items, by the way, repeatedly. And I like that you kind of unlock it as you go. But man, oh man, some of the other elements surrounding that are a total mess. I don't know what they were thinking. Like, I know they want to introduce you to get spells slowly, so you beat bosses to add more pages to the book, and that's how you get spells and things like that. And then there's other things in there that are just kind of questionable, I would say is the best way to put it. And there's a lot of exploits involving messing around with the settings in that little menu. And we enjoyed slowing down the text speed so that way dialogue would pop up when we skip enemies, which thankfully that is a thing they did not patch out in this version. I would be so mad if we could not skip encounters, just due to the ridiculous encounter rate throughout the game. But yeah, I just feel like with the Wizard's Companion, it was like, I could see what they were going for, where you could get additional recipes as you could go, and you get additional spells. But like, man, when you combine that with like the equipment upgrades, where like, you literally go like almost half the game without getting a single weapon upgrade for your other companions. And then they decide that in order to get like, even just like a third weapon for your companions, you have to craft some of the most annoying to steal items in the game. Like they're steals from rare enemies that you have to just know where they are, first of all, because they're not common across the areas. It's not like you just go to the bonus dungeon and it's like, oh, that's where they all are. Like, no. They're spread across every dungeon in the whole world, and they want you to kind of fill this out by stealing and doing random stuff like that. Man, oh man, was that a big mistake. Exactly. Like most parts of the game, good idea, poor execution. Exactly. And I think it's such a waste because like, it probably has like the most interesting components in it. Like you could see like your recipes as they come in. It fills in like a literal book, which is such a cool concept to see it actually, like that part of it is implemented well, where like you get new recipes, you can see it. You get new stories, you can see it. And it's literally, you can flip through the book and you can see what pages you're missing. You can see the spells fill in. And I like that, like, if you do take the time to examine the book and you see things like the world maps, which you can get updated by resting at an inn, it tells you where all the hidden treasures are if you examine the maps. Like, it really does reward you for going through it. And I like that there's like little things where some of the side quests have you refer back to the Wizard's Companion. There's a specific script in that book for the Nazca script, where they'll have just like a series of characters you could translate out, and it'll be like the hidden text. And you'll see a couple items with it in the game, including the starting weapon of the game. And I do like that as you go through the side quests. And I think this is the only kind of side quests that I kind of like with it, are the ones that involve the Wizard Companion. Because it was like, okay, we're showing that we actually, if you look through the Wizard Companion, we actually tell you more or less who the villain of the game is if you get to the end of the book. And there's also just like really random arbitrary clues on different pages, which you may or may not catch depending on whether or not you're crafting or looking up items in the book. And I think that was like one of the most like interesting parts of the game, yet they squander it by just having you do some like really dumb stuff with it outside of there. Like, yes, it's okay to make me go to it every now and then when you talk to like Horace, but like there's just, it just could get kind of sad and disappointing when it's like, you have all these other abilities and you have all these other spells, but you just don't get to use them, or you just kind of read about them, but there's nothing you could really do to interact with them, which is very disappointing. So like as a reminder, chat, like we ended up getting like a dozen spells that you just can't use. Like it's all fluff, but then like you look at what those abilities are and you're like, wait, why isn't this an ability in the game? Right? Like there were things like you could have like they had like things like transformation was in there. They had some like utility things which would have been kind of interesting. Like yes, you could speak to animals as a spell, but it would have been kind of fun to have like fast travel in the dungeons, especially with how much walking there is. Jeez, chat, there is just way too much backtracking and walking in this game. Having like anything to have sped that up, like where's the haste spell to give you double speed in dungeons? You know, where's the ability to turn into the cat or whatever for sprinting or like obstacle coursing? There's so many things in there. Like they had an ability for you to turn into a fish so you could go underwater. They don't use it in the game. It's just one of those things you get. They're like, you don't need it. And I'm like, okay, just why give it to us? I don't understand. Also, the subjects things like talk to animals, man, that was clunky. Yeah, like right? It's just like they're like, hey, we're gonna need you to talk to animals, but when you cast the spell, it's only to talk to that specific animal. So if there's like 5 or 8 in a room that you have to talk to, which did happen a couple of times in the game, I would just like to state, you have to use the spell on them every time, and then you have to use the spell on them again if you leave and come back. What weird implementation of some of the spells. And again, I like that they tried to incorporate like actual spell casting to resolve some of the puzzles, like you're lighting torches with the fire spell, you're lifting statues up and repositioning them with one of your abilities to lighten objects, for example. And I think that element of the game is interesting. Problem, they tied it into your MP. How do you get your MP back? You don't in the early game. Right, chat? You pray you level up before a puzzle, otherwise you have to go, guess I'm backtracking like 7 rooms to go get my MP back up because I don't have like the 16 MP needed to go light all these torches. Boy, that sucks having to cast Fireball for 4 MP / 3 MP, depending on where you are in the game, like 5 times in a row at low level. Like, oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, my 40 MP, I definitely didn't use all that up. And I think that is also one additional thing where I honestly did not like it, and I think the game would have been better off for it. I do think all the monsters, including the party members themselves, should have had a different MP total. I think if I had to say what my big issue was with it, that shared MP really sucks. So like you have Swain, who's like the thief tank kind of character with 0 MP. So he just has like no synergy with like more than half the monsters in the game, and you are forced to play a very specific playstyle with him. Or you have Esther, who is high MP and low defense, who decides that randomly she just won't put a monster out who will inevitably have better defense than her and die all the damn time, right, chat? So it's just kind of like one of those things where I liked the concept of it, but man, the RPG side just let things down. And it's just one of those things, like when you go through the game and you just get your wand and you're slowly building up the wizard's companion. It's very interesting that like Oliver is useful in some of the boss fights, and then others you might want to use your familiar. That might feel bad for people that only want to use the familiar, and I don't blame them. I don't think the stamina concept is a bad thing. It forces you to have at least multiple monsters to use, so you can't. So very early on in the game, you can only have them out for like 20 seconds, and then you got to swap either to another monster or to your own character. And I think that mechanic was probably okay. I don't think I had any major issues with it. But again, like the problem is like the AI doesn't know that. So if you tell them to block twice in a row, sometimes that can cause their stamina to break because they have low stamina. And then they just can't use that monster at all, and they're hosed for like 10 seconds. They just don't block. They just don't know what to do. And there's just like so many little things like that it was just very frustrating. I will say, like, from the bestiary side of things, it was kind of nice seeing like the animated images and like little lore details about the monsters as you go through with them. And I think that was extremely well done. And I like that you could look up some of the items in regards to like who has them and, you know, what their mechanics are to some extent. But at the same time, there's a lot that it didn't really explain. In particular, when it came to, I guess I would say that they call them tricks. The monster abilities are called tricks because you get trick slots to insert them, where it's just not really clear whether or not things are whether they pause the game with like a special cinematic or not. I feel like there's just like little indicators in there that would have been good. Or like, just because a move costs a lot of MP doesn't mean it's any good. And I do feel like, yes, games like Pokemon don't always go into those details, but at the same time, if you're gonna have like all these systems simultaneously, wouldn't you just, even if you don't want it on like the main screen, wouldn't you just give the player the ability to see like at least some damage multipliers or have like a general idea of it? Because like the concept of it, like moves have different MP costs. You would think more MP means more damage, where like in Pokemon, like less, you know, power points, the better it is kind of thing. There's not really a way to gauge some of these things, where you'll get abilities where you're like, do these two things do the same thing? I have like 3 things that blind, but they all seem to have different MP costs, so like is one a better success rate than the other? The answer's no. They're just more expensive, they're the bad ones. So I don't know. I feel very conflicted because I really did not unliking. I liked adding pages to the Wizard's Companion. I did not like getting options in the menu on the Wizard's Companion. So many damn tutorials came into that. Like pausing the game is a tutorial. Going into your equipment for the first time is a tutorial. And there's like so many forced tutorials around the book in general that it gets kind of annoying. And again, it's like all the excitement of like potentially doing a puzzle or at least trying out a new spell and figuring out things on your own, even if you don't like puzzles, it just kind of ruins the appeal of the book when like 9 times out of 10, Drippy is just gonna go, "Oi, wouldn't it be great if someone could melt the thing on the ceiling? If only you, the player, knew what spell could melt the thing on the ceiling to proceed." And like that stuff happens all the damn time, and it really, really ruins it. So it's like, what's the point of like going in the book if it's just gonna tell you like what to do, like almost verbatim, 95% of the game, including in boss battles, by the way. That is super obnoxious. That outside of like, oh, I can forgive them for the first couple of bosses of the game, right? They're like, okay, you know, it's for children. They gotta ease into the concept of like perfect timing attacks. That's fine. I'm willing to say, I'm not willing to say cut every tutorial, but man, we really shouldn't be at the final boss of the game or the penultimate boss, and they go, look out, he's got this one glowy thing. If you focus on it, maybe something will happen. Like, I don't need you to tell me that. Like, we'll figure it out. It'll be fine, right? Like, we'll figure it out. Tutorials even into the end, yeah. It's also one of those things, honestly, chat, maybe I missed it visually. Did it ever tell you, like, when you're selecting a spell, whether the enemy was weak to it? Like, it does color code the text very well, like blue if they resist, red if they're weak, white if it's neutral. I don't think when we were highlighting basic spells in combat, if we fought them before, whether it highlighted weakness. Maybe I missed it in the cursor, the targeting in the upper right. Chat could call me out. Maybe I just missed it. I mean, if chat didn't even notice or look, that should also tell you something from the UI side. Does chat even remember if it lit up with anything? Like when I was spamming, for example, Thunder on the machine monsters? We'll let chat think about it. I will say though, I think one thing that makes the game much harder, yeah, not sure, exactly. Like, how do I as a player and how does the audience not know? Like 60 hours of the game. That should tell you the UI has failed. I don't have anything else to say. Point proven. But besides that, I think where the RPG fails the hardest is that bosses are very showy, but are some of the easiest things in the game. I am far more concerned about the absolute BS of random encounters over any boss fight in this game. I think boss fights are actually surprisingly, for the most part, well done. Because they have telegraphed moves, the reward for blocking is really high. Oh, I forgot to mention that in combat, you get glimpse. So if you do defend or evade oncoming attacks, you are rewarded with health recovery items, or health recovery drops, not items. You don't consume them like a item command item. It's literally you walk over it and get healed, or walk over it and get MP. I thought it was really interesting that it rewards you for perfectly timing your attacks by making them appear more often, or if you happen to have an alignment that beats the enemy, those orbs naturally come up. So at the end of battle, you potentially gather them automatically with an ability, or you could walk over them mid-battle in order to get quick healing, so you're not spamming heal as much. So it rewards you for good gameplay there. That's a mechanic that's good. Mechanic that is bad. Those big tells that the bosses do so that you have a reasonable amount of reaction time, they don't give a damn about you in the random encounters. They barely have any stun animation. Things like counterattacking a boss will buy you like 3 to 5 seconds of the boss not striking. The boss will think about what to do, or they'll do another slow wind-up attack. So it's so rewarding to counter their attacks through like at least 60% of the bosses. If you learn to do that, it shuts them down really hard, and it rewards you for learning that timing. Which again, it's nice that it gives you a light up indicator, so you're not just totally guessing. You can look at the attack command and it lights up. I think that's an example of great UI. Where it fails to deliver that reward is when every damn enemy past a certain point in the game. I want to say somewhere around the Glistening Grotto, which is like maybe around the 3/4 mark of the game, somewhere between halfway and 3/4. Them spamming those cinematic attacks back to back to back and stopping you from consuming items or casting anything is some of the most heinous game design of all time. Chat witnessed me. We literally bulldozed every boss in post-game. First try. Bulldozed. Not even close. Not even close how much they got bulldozed. But I'll be damned if I fight those 3 laser robots again. Screw those 3 laser robots, chat. That was one of the most unfair and best examples of how unbalanced the combat is. Boss couldn't even kill me once as Oliver. And they are the ultimate post-game boss in the whole game. Couldn't kill me once. 3 robots with laser spam. Game over. Unbeatable. Just like actually unbeatable with my setup. I was like, I either have to train completely new monsters to have not fire resist, or I need to power level. There's no in between. I can't beat it at my level. This is insane. Yeah, I love that I thought I was handing in a quest, and the only time in the entire game it does not warn you that there's going to be a boss battle. It gives you the hardest encounter in the entire game. I'm not getting over that. That is not okay. That is not okay. They warn you every other time in the game. Oh, I got a bad feeling about this. This might be dangerous, Oliver. Maybe you should save or perhaps touch your equipment. They did it like 35 times in the game. Every single time they give you a warning, but that one time. And oh my gosh, when you're in the ivory tower and you hand that into those 3 people and you get bodied by them because you didn't full heal. Holy, is that unfair. It is unfair on so many levels. I don't even know where to begin. So, as I said before, the balance is super whack. If you happen to have a weakness to what they have and you don't have a backup monster, you're done. If you're leveling multiple sets of monsters, then your main monsters are going to be underleveled, and you're going to struggle for things that you should be at slight advantage to. So just the whole system itself falls apart the moment you realize that characters like Marcason, why was he even in the game? He doesn't even show up until like legit like what, 2 dungeons from the end of the game? Why even give me a character at that point? What idiots. So anyway, when you give me characters like that and you have like familiars where you have to have you just hope that they have like no weaknesses, or they're all neutral as you evolve them, or as you see, you might get to an evolution and it changes their weakness, so that might mess up what monsters you recruit, and you won't know that until you get to that point in the game where you're like, oh, I suddenly now have fire resist even though I was strong against fire in every other form leading up to this one. I'm looking at you, our main attacker, plus I think the Puss in Boots was the same way. I'm looking at you, both of those monsters, for example. It's just like one of those things where it's just like, there's just so much that is like out of the player's hand. And I think like if you know where all the great monsters are, it's so much more fun. You get Snake early, fun. You get things like Mana Ray, fun. You get things like the Deku tree from the Forgotten / Abandoned Mines. Top tier. That thing will carry you to the end of the game. But you try to win with like the Scruff Dog, or you try to win with like the imps, or you try to win with like the high evasion creatures, and then you get later in the game and you're like, oh wait, evasion doesn't matter at all because they're just gonna spam things that are guaranteed to hit you because it's cinematic attacks. Therefore, one of the stats in the game is literally irrelevant. It's never going to protect you, and you just have insanely low defense and you die. It's just kind of unfair to kind of go into that blind to not know that meta, where you just kind of get steamrolled because you just didn't play the game the way that they wanted you to. And again, unfortunately, I think the way they wanted to play the game was backtracking every dungeon like 7 times. I mean, like, how many times alone in that last session chat did I revisit a dungeon? 30? I want to say 30 times. Not an exaggeration. I honestly feel like we went to every dungeon at least once, and then I had to go to every dungeon again because they then gave me quests after I already completed the other quests that required me to go back through some of those dungeons. Mind-boggling they would design it like that. It's like completely absurd. So like just between, well, technically session and a half because we're including the Tuesday session actually in that conversation. But from that perspective, like there's so many times where they're like, okay, now go back to the jail cell in the Vault of Tears. Now go back to the boss chamber. Now go back to the boss chamber. Now go back to the boss chamber. Now go back to the beginning. Now go back to like now go to the robot halfway up the mountain. Now go to where the boss was. Now go back to this part. Now go. It was just like, oh my gosh, stop making me come back here with side quests. Just give them to me all in one go. Please, I beg of you, put waypoints in these dungeons. They're so long. Like the volcano and like the graveyard area. Fantastic visuals. I never want to run through them again. It's like a solid 3.5 minute walk, not an exaggeration, to go through the many paths winding up and down this stupid multi-screen mountain like on the map. And then it's like you get to it, you have 5 lines of dialogue, and you leave again. It's so damn rude. Yeah, now walk through the marsh twice. That one tilted me. It's like, I'm like, no. I just went through the Dread Marsh. Why? Or the Miasma Marshes. Why am I going back through this again just to go to the castle? Why didn't you just give me the castle quest, you jerks? So yeah, I don't think they playtested it very much at all, especially post-game. And as I said before, it's a shame. Like, all they really needed to do was rebalance the accessories a little bit. I feel like any monster that doesn't come with defense should have had way higher base defense. So that way, like, yes, the other monsters are tanky, but no, it's not to the extent that they're ridiculous. Like, characters that get the armors should have focused more on things like elemental resist or additional resistances in general, rather than just having overwhelming defense. Like, don't get me wrong, there were a couple monsters where their defense was so high, damage didn't really matter anymore. And we did suffer some damage because we didn't have any magic defense on some of these characters, so they did get kind of bodied at some points. But man, oh man, when you have a stats matter kind of gameplay, but you're not guaranteed to get the stats when you level, it's like, what do you do? It's like one of those things, like we had really fun with like the cat creature for like beating the game normally, but then in post-game, like he's getting 1 stat point to everything, where like we have like one of the most ridiculous characters in the entire party, almost doubling the attack of everybody else, almost double the defense, or 1.5 times to double defense, depending on what creature, compared to everything else. And then he gets like 7 to all stats. And you're like, how is this fair? You're like, so you're gonna tell me I have to level like 30 times with this creature just so I take 30 less damage? Or I level like 3 times with this other one and it takes like no damage and it's stronger. So like, I don't mind there being the equivalency of like legendary monsters that you could collect, and there's some that are going to be obviously stronger. But like when it's to the point where some monsters have like literally useless stats, it feels so bad. Because again, you don't know how they're gonna level. And it's also deceiving because when they start at level 1, some monsters only get +3, +4 on that first level up. And then some other monsters do like a catch-up. Like they have like a pseudo catch-up system. Like they level once and you're like, oh, I'm at 60 defense and I'm just gonna gain 32 defense at level 2. Right, chat? We've seen that multiple times. We're like, wait a minute. When we got you, you were slightly worse than our like most level character, but then you just got like 48 in a stat at 2 levels. What? Remember that, chat? Remember how extreme that was? Like, it was to the point where we're like, is this right? Like, I don't understand. Where, like, I know certain characters will get different stat growths, but man, it just felt really bad that it's like you have to fight with them and level them just to see if they have a good stat growth. It just so many questionable decisions in this game. I will say, as I said before, I didn't really find the plot super appealing to me. I do think I liked exploring the world, but I didn't like it mostly due to Drippy existing, and I found him very annoying as like the character that was the Navi of this game. Who, it's kind of funny, Drippy is a fairy, so he fills that role very well, I guess. But man, oh man, does he over-explain. Is just kind of a jerk to you most of the time, honestly. And then, like, I think everybody was cheering when we almost left him behind at Fairy Grounds. We really did not do it. You liked exploring the world the first time we had to walk through it. Exactly. I did like finding some of the chests. I do think it was very, very jank when it came to the green chests. Remember that, chat? It was like, find the magic pixel where you can aim at the chest. Where it's like, you just kind of, you're looking at it, you're like, you're hitting confirm, no. You're backing up, no. You're re-angling, no. Do I stand here? No. Am I on the slight incline? No. Oh, wait, I found this magic line that lines up with the chest, and now we're gonna give you the prompt to aim at the chest in, like, close third person. And again, it's like, they put that mechanic in there, and it's like... But why, though? I mean, I guess it's kind of neat. You have like the concept of hidden chests versus like using the unlock spell, but it's like, man, this is really annoying. If only you just had the ability to go in first person at any point, or the equivalency, without finding some magic spot where the game thinks you should do it. It's just one of those things, chat. I don't know. There's just a lot of weird decisions in there. Is there anything chat wanted to add? I think we're kind of coming to the wrap up. A nice solid hour as we talk about this game and ran a bit. I will say, from the standpoint of game enjoyability, it is a lot more fun when you have the overpowered creatures. It generally is fun as long as you have at least one good tank. But again, like, a lot of the problems are that the AI will assess sometimes to not use your tanks, or they'll use tanks when they shouldn't. I don't know why it happens. It's like some magic number in the stats or some magic resistance in the enemy causes them to behave weirdly. Like, if they see a creature as physical resist, they're gonna swap into your tank more because it has like a really crappy spell, even if melee does more damage than the crappy spell. Like, they're not very good at evaluating those decisions. But at the same time, we've seen it where they have a creature with like 60 to 80 magic defense and physical defense higher than their main creature, but they'll still block with like the glass cannon mage. I don't really understand it. Esther was too frail. Yeah, again, things like that, human characters, they should have just been able to equip more items. Human characters should have been able to equip the helmet piece, the armor, shield equivalency, more than just the badge and the other thing. It would have given more use for the other equipment, for sure. Heavy armor should have gone to Swain, for sure. She should have had option, but she should have had the robes and shirt, and then I think also the mages should have had between clothes and robes, because they do distinguish between the two categories for whatever reason. So it's definitely just one of those things where they really needed to retool what items people could use. And as I said before, like, if you aren't playing the items that are used by the starting familiars, you just kind of don't get any item support from quest completion and the story drops. Like, it got a little better with Axe Hammer, but there is a long period in the game where we got nothing. Right, chat? What was it, like 3/4 of the way through the game, we finally got like one hammer to drop, other than like the starting hammer? Like, that's just too long to go without getting rewarded. And again, rip Helmet. I don't even know why Helmet was in this game, to be real with you. I don't even remember what monsters could use it. I think we had one, I think you had one monster, maybe two. Where it's just one of those things where we had all these interesting lances and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like, the characters that could use them just weren't appropriately statted. Like, I think Esther's Familiar was pretty good. I think we kept her with it almost the whole game. I think only when we got into post-game where her AI just literally refused to block with the tank. Like, she just would literally try to block with the mage. I don't understand why it happened. We saw it happen. We also saw, by the way, I just want to add to that point, the AI being annoying. We also saw to the point where when you tell them to do all-out offense or all-out defense, they are allowed to use MP and ignore your strategies that potentially tell them to not use MP, which I really, really recommend you tell your AI to not use MP, because they will blow it all in one battle and really stupid crap. But from that standpoint, with her specifically, I don't know what it is with her AI, but she just forgets how to heal. Just randomly. Remember that, chat? When she was standing there, she's fighting the boss, she had 30 health, 60 MP, and she just stood there. She didn't attack, she didn't use special abilities, she just stood there and totally derped. And it's like, what is she doing? She's going to die. She has like 200 plus health. Why is she not healing? 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 She's still not healing. The boss is winding up a very slow attack. Please dodge. She's choosing not to move. She's also not defending. Why isn't she healing? And she's dead. The story of Esther. And she's dead. I think that's the best summarization of that character. Man, oh man. I would just like to say one additional thing before we go to final thoughts from the audience on the game overall. That was such a slap to the face that I have to struggle with, like, the idiot duo of Somewhat Tanky and Glass Cannon Dummy, of them dying all the time to stupid stuff constantly every other fight in normal encounters because we're not grinding. They just explode, where they'll have a tank, they'll live, and the moment they break the stamina gauge on the tank, they die because they just don't know how to defend. They don't actively try to move their monster out of battle, which is real-time combat. I don't remember if I declared that, but I'll declare it here. Real-time combat, so you can dodge it in real time. It's not turn-based. So one of those things is just like so frustrating to me that you go through the entire game. You have the big reveal that the girl that's been helping you in one world is actually this, not even soulmate, but is part of the big bad, the White Witch. And the console is a manifestation of the people that led her astray. And the power of her imagination basically manifests and becomes real and attempts to take over the world, I guess, for lack of a better sense. That last part happening in the last 10% of the game. Majority of the game is just seeing the after effects of some of her agents of chaos, we'll call them, attempting to set up for the purification of the world through mana. Basically destroying their hearts, etc., etc. But from that standpoint, why oh why, when you beat the game, and it gives you the ability in the spellbook to cast Altar the Ashes, which is a revive spell, which you've been waiting for the whole damn game, and the game is missing really basic RPG element spells like this in combat. Why can't you use it in the post game? I cannot tell you how horrible it was doing the Coliseum, where items are banned, and having, like, the idiot twins walk up and die to something stupid, and then you start the next arena battle at 1 health, where the enemy might just, like, frame 1, start casting a cinematic attack, meaning they'll probably interrupt any items that you use, or not items, you can't use items there. You can't use any heal magic on them, because they'll just get hit instantly by some, like, dumb 30 damage move, but because they're at 1 health, it'll kill them. And it's just so frustrating to get all the way to the end of the game, and they acknowledge that it exists in the game, and the whole concept of bringing people back to life being quote-unquote a forbidden spell makes sense thematically, but don't you dare tie basic things like reviving your party members to just being consumable items. Oh my gosh, it tilts me off the face of the planet. That tilts me, chat. Don't lock basic game mechanics out for story reasons. Please don't do that. I really beg of you, There's a reason that there have been decades of RPGs where you have multiple means of reviving people and multiple means of getting AoE heal, which, by the way, why doesn't our healer learn AoE heal? By the way, why doesn't she just have that? Or if she had it, she never used it as the AI. In fact, we even gave her a companion that had a targeted heal versus a cinematic AoE heal. I think it was Healing Rain, and she never used Healing Rain. I had to keep swapping to her because she didn't know how to use it. I don't know, chat. Just like the AI is just like it baffles me. Like everybody's at like 50% health or lower, and they're like, "Guess a better single target heal," and I'm like, "No, you should be casting AoE heal, you idiot." Like this is just like really basic stuff. It's mind-boggling to me. So unhelpful is so true. It is actually kind of crazy. And as I said before, we mitigated it a lot in our playthrough because we knew just how stupid they were and how much they will blow your MP. They're like, oh, is it just some random guy can kill in 2 hits? Better cast a 48 MP spell to kill the enemy you can kill in 1 melee move. And you're like, seriously? We need our MP for puzzles. Also, in alignment with that, how come you don't have the ability to use their MP out of combat? What's up with that? If that existed, I'm telling you, we never found it in the game. I don't know what it was under, if it allowed you to do it, but man, oh man, having a healer in the party and we have to keep using our protagonist MP to heal them for their mistakes, and we can't use their MP unless we're in combat is like mind-boggling to me. That is like madness. It's like you're playing the equivalency of a red mage, and you have a white mage and a tank, and you can't use the white mage's healing ability for some reason, and you gotta burn the red mage's abilities. So now you don't have MP to cast spells. Stupid. Absolutely stupid, chat. I don't know why they did it. So it's just like little things like that, as I said before. It's not like one decision that ruins the game. It's just a lot of things combined that really kind of sour the experience. Where, like, again, like, if you know about these things, if you do a little bit of research, the game can be fun. But man, oh man, if you're expecting this to just be a stroll through the park, maybe it is if you like grinding. I will say, if you're gonna capture every monster, if you like basically leveling all the way to max and then just making sure if they hit level 1, you grind them so they're basically at the same level, that kind of play style is not impacted by this. But if you're just going from point A to point B, and sometimes you'll detour for side quests, that's honestly not good enough unless you happen to get the right monsters. So I just want to add that as one last warning that man, oh man, is this game very punishing for not having certain item types like badges, or making sure AI has shields. If AI doesn't have a shield creature that also has defend, not psych up, which lets you attack more often, it's very specifically they need defend or evade, which you won't know until you capture them or you look it up. Unless they are given these things, they are just gonna die over and over and over. It's really hard to time things like evade because it's a short window compared to defend, which is like easily triple the length. And the boss charge time is extremely variable. We've seen attacks that take upwards of, like, what would you say, chat? Like 7-9 seconds? Even like the final boss of the game had like the Great Divider, for example, and that thing was like 5, 6, 7 seconds of wind up, and then even then you could, if it wasn't aimed at you, you still had time to block before it came out. And other things are like War Splitter, Snowstorm, Hailstorm, Snowstorm, and you just die. You just die instantly. Yeah, like, it was so long it timed out our defend. I'll put it that way. Defend is not a short skill, let me put that very clear. So I think it's just very frustrating when you combine all those things of the unresponsiveness of the AI. You don't have the ability to just tell them straight up defend. They will play defensively, but not necessarily defend, and that can ruin a lot of fights where they just do something stupid like they're low on health, and instead of blocking while low on health while a boss is doing a very obvious move, because it even announces the move for you, which again, great visual indicator for the player, the AI just doesn't know. They just don't recognize the boss is doing this slow 8-second move, and they will just take it in the face. They won't try to walk out of the way, they won't try to block on their own, they're just gonna take it in the face and die. So it's just one of those things, chat. You just have to know that is gonna happen. You cannot trust them to be competent. I do think at least it's nice that you can, midway through, again, early on in the game it's locked. I don't understand why, really terrible decision. But once you have the ability to toggle between offense and defense, and you also turn off their MP, the enjoyment of the game was like way higher. way higher compared to the beginning, where you're playing just Oliver trying to dodge boss attacks manually, which is okay. It's not really all that fun or that engaging. Then you start getting into familiars where you start having multiple attacks, and then you can counter their moves, and then you can figure out weakness. Then it gets a little more interesting. Then you get into more advanced stuff, like you tag swap your glass cannons whenever you're about to get struck, so that way they automatically dodge. And it means because you're the main character, whoever you're playing as is always going to be focused, which just be aware of that is the case. You will take the attack attention like 80% of the time. Very rarely will it be taken off by your allies. There are skills that do it. Allies tend not to use those skills very often. If they use AoE skills, sometimes they'll pull, but at least if you make them do all-out offense, there is a more likely than not chance that attack detention will get pulled from you. But man, oh man, is it frustrating to see them in like normal AI behavior, and you're fighting off like 5 enemies and they're struggling to kill one. And that could be very frustrating in the game. And I think it's very unfortunate. And as I said before, like you get different abilities, like the protagonist gets like the elemental attacks and also healing, and he can basically do everything. He's just a great magic user in general. But one thing he can't do is melee. So it's like you will lean on the familiars a bit more and you'll feel more successful there. And the problem is like you're kind of forced to play as certain characters so that they do what you want them to do. If you want them to heal preemptively, you know, they're not at like 33%, but they're at like 70%, for example, and you need that healing because you know that you're about to take a lot of damage. You're not really gonna be able to be fine-tuned like you can in some games to say like, oh, if you're below X percentage health, go heal, or just generally always heal to full, or be very aggressive with healing. You could tell them that, but then they'll still waste their MP on other stupid stuff. And it's all that other stupid stuff as you're in the early and mid game where you just really can't afford them burning like 20 MP to increase your defense on a random encounter every encounter. Like you're just going to be out of MP before you're even through the first floor of a dungeon kind of thing. And I think that's very disappointing. I will state that they try to give you a reason to do the side quests by filling out like a stamp book, and you get to pick your own bonus. I like the idea of that, but again, the abilities are just kind of really unbalanced between each other. Some are very terrible. And I also wish that you could skip a bit more. So like you have like one tier of goods that requires you to get all of them, and then the second tier requires you to get all of them. I would have liked for them to have just been unlocked at a certain story point instead, so that way I could actually get those upgrades, or if it did, I got really unlucky and that was my perception of it. Either or. But it's one of those things where like some of the abilities just kind of weren't really worth taking, especially if you knew about the trick where like if you cast levitate and the text is on screen, you ignore all combat and enemies don't chase you. Like if you don't do that, some of the other abilities are easier, but like the fact that you could guarantee like back attacks whenever in the dungeons or skip all encounters with that spell is kind of wild. I like that levitate has like only like 2 uses in the whole game, like to bypass the trap and to get over poison without getting poisoned constantly in the marshes, but its real use is just skipping all dialogue and combat and everything else. Which I don't think was their intent, but it's very funny that it ended up being a better word spell than Veil in some scenarios. Not to mention you get it earlier too. And it also costs less MP. It's only 4 versus 9. I don't know. Is there anything else to really say about the game? I think we covered basically everything at this point. We talked about Esther dying. We talked about frustration. I don't like how variable some... Oh, one additional thing, actually. In regards to actions. So, it is real-time combat. If you tell them to attack, they'll do X number of attacks while the attack command is active. So like if you have like 4-star attack, they'll generally get 4 attacks in before the attack command ends. Like that's pretty straightforward. What's not as straightforward and what really makes the game super punishing is that as you get later in the game and they have less and less reaction time in order for you to do defend and evade, if you are being aggressive with certain spells which have long cast animations and really big lag time after they're cast, you'll often find yourself unable to tell your allies to defend themselves, and you yourself can't defend, which I think is a really big issue in the mid to late game. And I think some of that was relevant in the post game, because we had to completely change our strategy, just because it was like, okay, I want to use Astra, or I want to use Mornstar, But the fact that it has a 3-second cast window means that some idiot random encounter enemy is probably always going to do a cinematic attack, because most attacks are faster than that, and it'll prevent me from casting my spell. Or like I'll be in a boss fight, or no, I'll be in the arena, and I just want to cast a quick heal spell, and they're like, nah, you got canceled. Nah, you got canceled. Nah, you got canceled. Nah, you got canceled. And so it can be kind of frustrating when all you want to do is just do spell damage, and they seem to be able to cancel you far more than you can cancel them. It's definitely... It feels very bad. So there's also times where, like, not only is item usage not instant, you have to go through this animation where you, like, rifle in your pocket, you throw it in the air, hand lingers for a little bit, healing number comes up, hand comes down, pause, 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 pause. Now you can defend. That pause, pause, pause is where you die on boss fights. If you're not at full health and you haven't been, like, hitting every enemy on the way to a boss, if you're skipping a lot of side quests, you're probably going to get hit by a boss attack in that window and die, and you'll just be locked out. So I think it's really unfortunate. You can't tell your allies, at least, to defend during that. I think that was a huge misstep, and that caused a lot of unnecessary difficulty. Like, I shouldn't be punished by having my whole team die because I used an item. I should be punished for using an item at a bad time, not my team. Do you know what I mean, chat? It's stuff like that where those little things add up, and I think they just fundamentally misunderstood what difficulty was. So they would think, like, a random encounter with only one enemy is not that bad. And then that random enemy will be, like, the Clubber Panther with 5 attacks a second, who has, like, double their normal stats, and they just kill you nearly instantly. And then they'll go, oh, okay, so you're gonna fight something that moves faster than you can, attacks faster than you can cancel your own attacks, and will get through most of the defense of your monsters. And that's an okay thing. But then we're gonna say, we're gonna have a boss that attacks like 4 times as slow as that, and has really long stagger animations. And then if you do special things, it'll paralyze the boss for a long period of time. Like, they'll consider that the hard part of the game and not the random enemies, which, like, boggles my mind. And you can see that philosophy because they think it's fair, quote unquote, to have certain monster combinations in random battles that you never see in any boss fight at any point. Like, there's only a couple bosses that have additional enemies other than the boss itself. But as long as you have the one-hit KO prevention badge, most of those bosses will be very straightforward. Like, yes, you could get caught off guard or put in an awkward state where you want to defend, but you're stuck in an animation. There's nothing you could do. Nor can you cancel the spell once you start casting it. You're just hosed. And you just have to either know their timing or just believe in the heart of the cards, I guess, whether the spell's going to go through. But I find it very frustrating from that standpoint where you have all these different abilities. You have the ability to defend. You have the ability to evade. And it just gets locked out for your party members, and then you don't even get a guarantee that they can do that. And so their balance of it is like, we're just gonna give you like 6 to 8 seconds, or even 9 seconds in some scenarios, to block. So no matter what you're doing, you can always react to it. But then, like, some random idiot, like, ghost creature is gonna be spamming Snowstorm, and like the first move, like the first 5 frames of the game, they're immediately going to hit you. So as soon as you menu do any action, hit confirm, they've already hit you with the cinematic. And then before your controls come back, they have frame advantage, and they loop it before your menu can even come up, and another person does it. And then they, again, while you don't have the menu up, it's physically not on screen, they do another one. And then they're like, oh, we'll hit you a couple times. And it's like, those kinds of moments are just insane. And it's not a one-off. It happens a lot in the mid to late game. And sometimes the most annoying part is when it's healing, because you go to kill something and it could be at like 10 health, but oh boy, they're like healing rain, healing tier, healing rain, healing rain. And suddenly they're basically at full, and there's no interaction or gameplay from your side. You just have to watch them do this because they managed to outcast you. Yeah, those robots again are such nonsense. But it's just like, it's not just them. It's like the Yetis, it's the stupid healing creatures in Ivory Tower, it's some of the arena fights, it's anytime they pair a healer with anything that rapidly attacks. Like, it happens more often than it really should, and I think that kind of stuff is super unfortunate. But anyway, chat, I think we covered everything. It was a little bit of a ramble, but I think we got all of our thoughts out on the game. So overall, as a summarization, I think the plot was not really for me. I liked the universe itself. I liked exploring the differences between the fantasy world and the normal world. I wasn't feeling very compelled by Oliver's journey. Some of it has to do with the fact that the side quests are very mind-numbing and very unfun, and don't really play with the better parts of the game, which is the actual wizard companion itself, and doing some puzzles with that, or some of the spell interactions and the dungeons are kind of hampered by lack of MP, especially in the early game. Not so in the late game, but definitely in the early game, it's a problem to have so many puzzles that require MP, where you might need like 30 to 40 not 40 is an exaggeration, but you'll need somewhere between like 30 and 40 if you mess something up. And that could just completely tap you out, which is kind of wild. At least we got a cool car in the end. Now we can kill other people's mothers if only the car can hit people or control well. Yeah, that car was hilarious. That was a classic example of I don't think they tested it. I literally was holding like left on the control stick and going in complete circles in reverse. I don't understand those car controls at all. We used WASD and that thing took like 30 years to turn comparatively. So I don't know. What a mess. I'm trying to think, are there any other characters or any other shout-outs chat wants to mention? Were there any memorable moments? There's certainly some weird themes in the game. Like the fairy ground with the big mother birthing everything was just weird. I would put that under the just weird category. Yeah, definitely a big mistake to not have familiars early in the game for collectibles, because then again, like if you want to get those monsters, you have to revisit like 4 dungeons or something. Like, was it 4 dungeons, chat? Let me think. It was Deep Dark Wood, then you go to Ding Dong Well, then you go through the forest to the south, then you have to go through something else, and then you have to fight the nightmare, and then, and only then, do you get access to the ability to tame. Like, that's a lot of dungeons. I'm gonna put it that way. It's just way too many. Cheesy Wheezy, oh no. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it just, like, the mechanics, like, came out at a trickle pace. And, like, while I respect them trying not to overwhelm newer players, I don't think you should lock some of those actions. In particular, the all-out attack and all-out defense. That was, between that, I don't know which was the bigger mistake. The all-out offense and defense not being unlocked until Fairy Ground, which is, like, kind of far in the game. That's like the third party member. Only then you get the ability to get. I don't. It's just mind-boggling. It's just weird. No, I think we covered basically everything. I will say that it was kind of interesting to explore the overworld. I kind of like finding the shiny things or looking at the wizard companion, finding the marked places. I like the woods having a lot of hidden locations, and they themselves had chests. I think that part of the overworld was actually well designed. But man, everything else, the fast travel in between, it takes a long time to get to your basics. Like things like teleport to other towns and vacate dungeons take quite a while to get into it. It's not something you see for, I'm not gonna say halfway through the game, but it's a little before then. I don't think we got it before we had the third party member, but either way, the third party member is still pretty far in the game, like a little under 20 hours if you're doing, like less than 20 if you're doing no side quests. Then it's like 12 hours or like 10 hours depending on how much you skip. But with all the side quests, it was like a good 20 hours I think before we got our third companion, stuff of that nature. Yeah, I think that covers the chat. So we'll have discussions whether or not we want to do the sequel. We technically have played the sequel before, and I will say I didn't like how they changed the combat in 2. I wish they had just actually fixed the combat of 1, to be honest with you, where I think there were elements that were recoverable. Speaking of which, let me skip the song slightly. But I think overall, I don't know, mixed feelings. I would say for the most part though, I think it was nice to give elemental damage to the protagonist, so he could kind of do almost everything and your familiar fills the gap. I just wish the other characters felt that way. Like, your tanky companion will still need tank monsters, and your healer will probably still need a healer, because she is just so bad that she just can't fulfill her role. Whereas Oliver is strong enough that he could actually be a damage dealer, Glass Cannon, who has defend, which is important that he has defend. So, I don't know. Some mixed feelings there. I will say overall, there were definitely some, we'll call them classic JRPG problems. This will be my final call out, I promise. I promise this time I can't think of anything else. The runaway mechanic, useless. I swear we failed it like 7 or 8 times in a row at one point. I don't understand what influences its ability to make you run away. There's sometimes I run away in 2, and those are hard encounters. Then I could be in an easy encounter, and I could fail like 6 times in a row. Stealing is almost useless. Yeah, you're not wrong. It's one of those things where, because they put so much of the gear in the Wizard Companion with the alchemy formulas, which you get pretty early in the game, I will say it's before third party member, you basically get a hint of that. I don't mind you crafting to get some upgrades, but the problem is that, like, a lot of what would be considered very basic upgrades are in there, and they require rare items from enemies or rare steals, and it feels terrible. I mean, imagine going to, like, the beginning dungeon with, like, literal, like, level 10 enemies, and you're, like, level 80, and you're whipping steel, like, 6 times in a row. It's just, like, why? So, I know the game wants you to grind out, like, an insane number of enemies for rare drops, and stealing an insane number of items. Just to get a single weapon, it might require 5 steals from one enemy, and then 5 from another, and then maybe a plot item for one, or another 2 to 3 from another location. Like, that's just so much grinding for, like, a very minor stat boost. And sadly, a lot of those are just not defensive for the AI, which, again, because everything is so tied into your levels giving you defense, and some monsters just have no options at all to boost their defense that way, you find yourself either having to grind a lot to compensate, or you just swap monsters. And in our case, we didn't want to grind, we swapped monsters. But again, some of that was from having played the game before. Having to capture every monster through RNG and only then figure out whether they were worth leveling is just painful. I could not imagine going through that again. So anyway, chat, that is officially it. I have nothing else to say about the game. I will say overall, I'm still happy that we did play the game, despite it having a lot of rough patches. And unfortunately, I don't really think they expanded upon the idea in a way that captured the magic of, I would say, wonderment and childhood that I would say this game had. And I think they got a little misguided in some of their other entries, and I'll leave it there. So for now, chat, unless there is something you would like to add, I believe it is time to wrap up our final thoughts. I'm going to briefly rehydrate to give chat a moment due to stream delay. Chat says that's glad to finally see it, spotty as they may have been. Yeah, like here's the thing. I'm gonna be very clear. I totally get why people like this game. I don't fault them for it. It's just a really tall ask for people that aren't really heavy into grinding or don't like jank games. Like, this game is very jank. You could go from, I take 12 damage in a combat and we steamroll every encounter, to, hey, I went like one area over and they're doing 55 damage and I'm at 160 health and oh, I died in like one combo, it's over. Like, there's a lot of times where you'll just go to a new area and it's just like the wall of damage, you die. There's no in between. Or like you're going from your first party member to getting your second, or second to third, and the game is like, yeah, we're gonna have this area that you really need to have 3 characters to survive it, but it's possible to get in a lot of encounters. It's not like you go out of your way to like an optional area. Like, this is in the story. You have to go to this location with only one party member, and everything does so much damage, and there's so many enemies, and some of them are so fast, and they hit you with so many attacks, and they have long range attacks that don't care about whether you dodge. They heat seek you, and it's like, just getting hit by all that is like insane. So I don't think they balanced it very well. I don't think they understood how much of a problem defense was in this game. And I don't think they understood the power of no miss abilities, whether it's cinematic or whether it's one of those heat seeker abilities. And there's some that are really deceptive too. Like sometimes you see them do like a single sword swing and it looks like they're just doing a melee move, but no, it's a full screen insta hit. It doesn't produce like a shockwave and then hit you. It just hits you from there. Like there's no graphic line that draws the distance between you and them that forms and it like emanates from them like a laser or like curves out like a beam. Like you just take the damage and die. Like they're just like it's very shocking. Yeah, see, chat forgot about that. See, I'm used to it, so like I didn't call it out as much in the playthrough. It did happen a few times. It took me by surprise having played the game before. I was like, oh right, that move just hits full screen for no reason. Oh, okay. Good to know, I guess. Question mark. Sure. So yeah, it's just definitely unfortunate. As I said before, I did like the swapping. I don't know how much of that was intended for you to be able to tag swap out and switch familiars to dodge attacks. I thought that was actually really cool. I thought that was one of the more mechanically intensive parts of the game, other than like a timing mini game for countering their attacks. Like I think that actually it was like a good backup if you weren't feeling confident on the attack, because some of their attacks are random. Like whether it's like you need to bully them out of the attack versus, I guess that's one. I guess that is one last point I want to add. There's not really a clear indication, at least visually, whether you should dodge the attack or bully them out of the attack. Like the game will tell you if it's a boss that does that, but like it'll physically stop the game and tell you that. But visually speaking, I don't think there's a visual difference now that I think about it, between a boss charging a move you have to interrupt and a boss just charging an attack in general. I don't think there was. Question mark? Because like the game, because Driffy will be like, oh, you better stop him while he's charging up before something bad happens. Like he'll say something stupid like that to you. But it's one of those things where I don't know if when they have all the attacks out, if there's actually a visual difference. But anyway. I guess my final thoughts are, I wish the targeting was a little less jank when you swap between familiars, so it didn't make you retarget constantly. That was kind of annoying. And I definitely wish that there were just patches on the AI. Like if there was a patch to just let you turn off AI abilities, or to make sure that like, when you do all-out defense, they actually defend first, or you had the ability of more nuance, where instead of saying like all-out attack, all-out defense, if you had like 2 more tactics added to the game, one for just being like all-out support, that would have been really good, right? To distinguish when you want them to block versus heal. I think that would have been really smart to do. You have split that out, for example. What an easy fix to the problem. Do you know what I mean? Where they were too stupid to choose whether to heal or block. And it makes me think that this game is kind of an interesting study in terms of game design, of like what not to do, like how not to introduce children to a game where you die very arbitrarily going between different areas, and revive items are more expensive, and there's not really an easy way to revive them since you never get it as a spell, and there's not really easy access to AoE healing unless you luck into a monster that happens to know it, or very rarely you'll get it as a quest reward if you go all the way through. Again, I feel like some of those things should have been default abilities on your party members, not things that are only there in the monsters. Like, why do the monsters learn the revive spells, but you don't? What actual nonsense? Remember that was the thing, chat. Our allies could AoE heal with monsters and revive with monsters, but we can't. Whatever. But anyway, it's just one of those things where it's an interesting observation, I would say, as you go through. Just ask yourself as you play, what should they have done? And I feel like you'll say that aloud about the RPG side. You might say it a little bit about the plot of the game, but I do think at least there's like heart and charm to it. Like there's a lot of care in the elements like the Wizard's Companion, which I will continue to bring up because I think that is actually one of the most interesting aspects that it has. I think the game came with a physical copy. Chat was talking about it. So that way you could like literally open the book as you play, and you could go to the same pages. You have a digital version in the game itself. it's just one of those things where if they had just stuck to that, man, this game could have been like game of the year. Like no contest. Like they barely have to tinker any of the difficulty at all. They just need to fix equipment. They need to fix the AI. They need to change the tactics. They need to figure out tutorials a little better. Just remembering the story of the book about the lion that ate the prince. Oh my gosh, there's so many, and then I'm in your stomach moments in that story. I don't even know where to begin. But anyway, it's one of those things where there's a lot that is memorable, whether it's the creature designs or the music or the settings or some of the themes where you're seeing and grappling with the fact that your mother is dead, she's not coming back, she's 100% gone, and those kinds of things, that even with the power of magic, there are things that cannot be undone. I think there are some interesting themes in there, and I totally get it. I will just say, it's not a game I will replay. That I can safely say. It is not a game I plan on replaying in the future. I'm happy we did it, though. And with that, chat, that is officially my last word. That is my final thought. I have nothing else to add. I remembered at the last minute we did talk about targeting as I scanned my thoughts. But I think at this point, we are done with Ni no Kuni. Round of applause, chat. Thank you for sitting through probably one of our longest final thoughts, because honestly, there is so much we could talk about where we want to give praise and credit where it's due, but we have to be very critical. We have to be very honest about it. It's just one of those things where it has flaws, and these are the flaws. This is how we dealt with them. Be aware of it. It is very jank. If you're okay with it, then whatever. But anyway, chat, let's go ahead and say goodbye to YouTube. So thank you again, everybody, for watching. Thank you for putting up with the very long review. And with that, we'll have a little talk on our stream itself. But for YouTube, that's all for now. I'd just like to say thank you again for watching, YouTube. Hope to see you again in the next game.